our other room. So it's good to see everybody. We got a full board today. That's you guys are glad you guys are able to make it, and we also have a new member, and we're gonna just jump on in if it's okay with the chair.
Absolutely.
All right. This meeting then is called to order. Notice of the September 12th, 2023 meeting of the Real Estate Appraiser Commission, including date, time, and location, has been noticed to the Real Estate Appraiser Commission website since May 11th, 2023. Additionally, this month's agenda has been posted on the website since September 5th, 2023. All right, let's do the roll then. Eric Robinson. Brett Mansfield.
Here.
Francie Mello. Sandra Tuck.
Here.
Nelson Pratt.
Here.
Dr. Mark Sunderman.
Here.
Will Haston.
Here.
And Taylor Vandever. Is that Vandever or
Here.
Vandever?
Vandever.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I don't want to spend the entire season, mispronouncing your name. That'd be bad. So thank you. All right. Well, welcome. You will see one thing on your agenda at the very near the bottom, right before the legal report. We have the public comment period related to items on the agenda. That's relatively new. We had a statute that passed that requires that to be on all of our agendas going forward, and it just allows any member of the public, should they be present, to sign in and limit their comments to items related on the agenda for about 2 to 3 minutes, and just address whatever those items may be. The reason we put that before the legal report is so we don't want to prejudice the legal report. We want to maintain the anonymity, and we don't want things that cases being introduced. But beyond that, anything other, they're free to address the commission at that time. So at this time, just like a rulemaking hearing, I'll ask, is there any member of the public here that would like to sign in or have any comments? Okay. No, David? All right. We have one member of the public, and it doesn't look like he'll be signing in. So when we get to that point, I'll pause again and just at this moment, I would invite them to sign in so that we could read them into the record. But then at that moment, I'll take another opportunity and just pause and see if there's anyone else that may have filled in since we started. All right. A couple things. One, you'll notice you have a new member there, Mr. Taylor Vandever. He comes to us he's stepping in for Mr. Atwood. Of course, his term was up, and he hung in there with us a little while longer to help us out, and we appreciate that and appreciate his service as well. And so we gave him sort of a send-off at the last meeting, and Mr. Vandever will be stepping in for him, and he's going to be covering the Grand Division of Middle Tennessee, lives in Lebanon, so maybe we'll carpool or something, Taylor. We'll work that out, later. But he's an attorney and a CG, and we look forward to sending some experience interviews your way too. So I know some of the rest of you guys will appreciate that, and thank y'all too for all your heavy lift on that front. Also, I wanted to. Of course, you've met Heidi. She's sitting here to my left, your right. She's our admin manager, and she's been helping us out for a while. And as a part of just development and business continuity, she's going to be taking on a more active role with this commission. So, I'll always be there, but she'll probably be facilitating the next meeting or the one shortly thereafter with me present, of course. But I just want to kind of, before just throwing her to the wolves, kind of give her an opportunity to work out some of that and get there. So appreciate you guys being so patient with us as we do some of that. And I just want to make sure that, as with any business continuity plan, we always have a succession plan in order, whether we need it or not. It's just good to have one. And so I don't want you guys to miss a beat, and want to make sure that she has all the pieces. All right. So unless Mr. Vandever has anything to say, I think we can move on to the next piece. I promised him that he wouldn't have to get a speech. Somebody call in. But
excuse me?
All right, we'll meet some of some of those joining us online.
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
We're just really rubbing it in, huh? I mean, I make a point. All right. So I think we're ready for the agenda then. Do you have any edits to the agenda? Right. Okay. We got a motion from Mr. Mansfield to approve the agenda. Do we have a second? Second. We got a second from Mr. Robinson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Hearing none, then the agenda is approved. I think we can move on to the June minutes then. Any edits there? Okay, I think we can entertain a motion then. Do we have a motion to approve the June minutes as written?
So moved.
Got a motion from Mr. Mansfeld. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a second from Mr. Haston. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none then. I think we're ready for the experience interviews. Let me just read what we have, and then from there. All right. Right now, under Mr. Haston, he has interviewed Jennifer Cohens, Milton Pearson, John Davis, and the recommendations there are yes. Do we have any other additions there, Mr. Haston?
No.
Okay. Mr. Mansfield has interviewed Bradford Harden and Jennifer Bourne and Josh Couch, and he recommends Bradford Harden and Jennifer Bourne. Do you have any updates for Josh Couch?
We're still working together.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
Not quite at this time.
Okay, very well. From Mr. Pratt, we have William Mayfield, William Stevens, and Travis Steckler, and those right now are a yes. Did you have any additions or edits there?
No additions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Miss Tuck, we have Petra Spain, Gerald Terry, Mackenzie Wood, and Marsha Allman, and those are recommended for upgrade. Do we have any edits there? All right. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, and we'll just need, if you could speak to the microphone. And just also, Mr. Vandever, if you don't see that red, then we can't hear you. We have to record that, so we're just tracking everyone.
No.
All right. There you go. All right. Thank you for that tutorial and for your information there. Appreciate it. All right. With that, do we have a motion to accept the panel as recommended? We got to get that in the microphone. Sorry, they can't see you there. All right. If it's, you'll just hit that speak and it should hit. There you go. I got you. All right. Well, we got a motion from Miss Tuck. So do we have a second? Got a second from Mr. Pratt.
Second. Yep.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Hearing none, then we'll get that's official. Application reviews. We already had this discussion a little bit last meeting, and we just wanted the benefit of our entire membership, or specifically our AMC member, and Mr. Robinson is here with us today. So no new information on this one. The issue, if you'll recall, was the affiant in this place, the AMC owner, marking no in two places when the question being, I'll just read it to you. Have you ever been convicted of, pled guilty, or pled no contest to any criminal offense? And he marked no on both places. And obviously the report came back with the criminal offense, and so the criminal offense itself wouldn't have been a non-qualifier, but the issue was the fact that he marked a no when it should have been yes. And so under TCA 6239.410B, the designated controlling person pursuant to subsection A shall be of good moral character as determined by the commission, and 3, submit to a background investigation as determined by the commission. So we've got part 3 submitted to the background investigation, but now the be of good moral character. So it's just, that was the discussion. You have discretion to make a decision for in regards to this particular individual, and all the documents there in front of you, as well as his response. So I guess since we already had our piece, we'll maybe open it up with Mr. Robinson if you had any just initial comments after hearing. And
I
all right, well, hold on a second.
I had a question. Sorry, I had a question. Do you know exactly what came back from the background check? He's indicating here that after talking to legal counsel or whatever, that his understanding that due to statute of limitation for this kind of minor charge, was expunged and would expire after 5 years, and that there would be no future record of the. Obviously, this was on his background check, so I was wondering exactly, do we know what was on his background check, how it was recorded?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, and obviously background information is a little bit more sense, so I can give you sort of general information. But it was something along the lines of a assault charge, something when he was young, and so it's the only thing about expungements is that one, that's having been in that, I worked as a probation parole officer. That's a process. You typically expungement it's not something that, it's not that we don't take it under consideration. Expungement is just that taken from your record, and so that's a legal term. And obviously, we got counsel here that can sort of flesh that out a little bit more. But an expungement it's removed from your record entirely. And statute of limitations would mean for you to even be charged, so couldn't be that, and it's not an expungement, in the legal sense. So I'm not sure what he was referring to, and the question wasn't, as it pertains to expungements or otherwise, but it was to any criminal offense.
I guess I was concerned the fact that this was not mentioned in his original letter. And the fact I've had a friend who had a situation and something was expunged, and I know that it's no longer on his background check. So the fact that this seems a little strange, the fact that he just assumed it would just disappear, and therefore he shouldn't have to report this anymore. So I just found that this information was, again,
those are great comments, and I think your instincts are correct. I would find that very strange that you'd be able to that seems like quite a leap there to make that assumption.
Yes. But those.
This is work. The only thing that I had, and I'm willing to abstain from the vote since I am with an AMC, is just the fact that he left on his application. All the happened, other people in their past, to go through that process. Put that information on their application. They checked yes. They put down what it was, and we're forthcoming with their information. And he wasn't.
It's just so you know too, I just received another application just this past week, similar situation, except for this fella, he had a DUI 20 years ago and didn't report it. Again, would have been immaterial to his application. Had he reported it, we wouldn't be talking about him now, So then if we get to the point, and I'm not saying we're there, I don't know what the will of the commission is. Well, that's why we're having this discussion. But if we get to the point we say, yeah, we're going to deny that application, then do we start separating out based on charge? Do we start sort of litigating, the circumstances, what their response is? And that can turn into sort of an administrative concern as well. Not to discourage or say that that's not the right thing to do. Just those are some things that we'll have to sort out as we get these.
Didn't we get information that if he had reported some law that covered that?
The Fresh Start Act, he would have, I don't think that would have kept him from, because it would have had to been material to the, to what he was doing, and we'd have to make that case, and Anna would have to put that through the grid, and then we'd have to basically justify that there's a material reason that's unique to the profession for that would justify that denial, and so the charge on both of these, wouldn't have kept them from getting the application. The issue, the issue here is just the fact that there was a misrepresentation on the application, and I think one thing that was particularly difficult for me too was not just a misrepresentation, but we have an affidavit, so that sort of elevated it, aggravated that as well, in my mind. When you go to as a person of integrity, period, let your yes be yes and your no be no, period. The affidavit shouldn't change that. But then that's another barrier that you crossed, So to me, that's troubling. So that's why we're talking about it.
Glenn or legal, can you, has there ever been a precedent for this set in the commission? Have we ever had this situation arise before?
Hold on just a second. We got some technical difficulties that's coming through. I've got to manage that. I'm sorry. Let me just take a quick pause and then just sidebar and then see if we can sort of straighten that out. Give me just a moment here. Yeah, I think that would be wise. The advice here was let's just take a quick little break. So if you guys are good with that, let's take a 10-minute break. It's 9:18 now. We'll get back in seat. Just to make it easy, we'll say 9:30. How's that work? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't understand your request.
Yeah, it works great when it works, right? But when it doesn't, man. So, but we got it figured out. Thank you to admin support. Laura had to come down and sort of wave her wand a little bit, and we're grateful for that extra help. But anyway, we're back in the saddle. So we'll go ahead and reconvene then. I think we can pick up where we left off. The discussion was the application review in front of us. And I believe the last question we had was maybe how often we get those, or
I just said in this commission or any other boards that you're over, what's the precedent for?
For this board, none. That's why we're having discussion now. Unfortunately, I went back far enough. There wasn't. Well, in AMCs, they're just. Actually, I was talking to Mr. Robinson. There's just they're not a large group. I mean, I think we have like 260 licensees or so. I think maybe even less than that. I think we're actually quite a bit less now. Our license number is 260, but some of those have rolled off. Yeah. So like 50, 60. So 260 since inception. So we got a lot less than that, 50, 60, something like that. And not all of them are in the state. So we just don't get a lot of them, so that's primarily why. Some of our other boards, there's so many considerations, in regards to that. It's really hard to put a gauge on that. Yes, ma'am.
On the application, does it ask you if you have been denied an AMC license in any other state? And I remember from the last meeting, he is licensed in other states. So I wonder, do all states require a background check?
I do believe they require a background check just because of federal guidelines. Yeah. And so, right.
But what about the question on the application?
There's 4 questions on the application. If you go to, let's see, the third page of the application review, those questions are listed there. And let's see. Yeah, it says, have you been disciplined in Tennessee or elsewhere? So that's one. Or any disciplinary action against you with any registration you hold. And then the problem that we had was that third one, which was, have you ever been convicted of, pled guilty, or pled no contest to any criminal offense, or is there any criminal felony or misdemeanor charge new pending against you? So that's pretty broad. It's meant to be because, we want the opportunity to look at that charge. I mean, we just, that does matter. And then the last one, any administrative action. What does, I take that back. The first part of the first question, have you ever been denied an appraisal license certificate?
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn, question for you. Is the affidavit, is that normal procedure for the application, or is that just additional information he provided?
It's normal procedure. And then you'll notice too that if you look at the online application and then also the affidavit, which is a separate form he filled out. At the online application, the next page, I think it's page 4 on that application, there's an attestation there too. as well. So you have one there because, some people, especially on an online application, will fat finger something, and I mean, that happens. It's, and we just ask for clarification. We'll go back to somebody if we think it could be an issue and say, hey, X, so, and then tell them, oh yeah, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to put yes or no on that or whatever. And then we'll add that to the file for documentation. But here with the AMC owners, we also have the affidavit itself, which is that additional form. So no was marked twice, both on the online application and on the affidavit itself.
If we were to deny the application, could this individual resubmit a new application?
I think they could, but then we're right back where we started. That's the only thing, that's.
Do they resubmit an application under a new name or controlling person?
That they could do. Yeah, the AMC could do that. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. One more question. Sorry, Brett. Could you go over again? You had mentioned that you had another case where an application is coming up referring to a criminal offense. Could you walk us through exactly what you were referring to, that if we, were to deny this application, that we would start looking at levels of criminal offenses? And I just want to understand what you were referring to there.
It's, well, like with anything, and, Mr. Mansfield alluded to precedent. Precedent's a powerful, that's why you have case law. It's a powerful force, and so I think my cautionary tale is just anytime there's precedent, sometimes you have unintended consequences. You're dealing with one situation, but in an effort to apply it fairly, you have to apply it across the board. And, even in sentencing, you have mitigating and aggravating circumstances. So, certainly in the criminal world, they understand each case that stands on its own merit. However, administrative law and typically precedent is a little bit more powerful, and so I just say that if we're going to get down to if we're going to apply our discretion, and if we establish a precedent, we may have to clarify that if there's any exceptions there. I'm just saying, I'm trying to anticipate down the pike where this could go, should we get others like this.
What's the application fee for the AMC?
$2,000, I think. Junk.
$2,000.
We do have again. I mentioned earlier that we have the applicant on the line. This seems like since we're sort of at a pause, maybe an opportunity for him to provide additional information. Let me get him up. Let me see. We got Mr. Farinella. Let me see if we can get him on.
Yeah.
Are you there? Okay, great. Sir, you were the commission's listening to you. You're free to speak.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you allowing me to speak. I was trying to, when you originally asked, but obviously there were some technical difficulties. So I appreciate you giving me another shot at it.
Sure. And I guess the essence, again, is that there was a misrepresentation, whether intended or otherwise, that we're dealing with on the affidavit.
Yes. And so let me just first off start by saying, I'm extremely apologetic about the situation, and it was 100% a misunderstanding and an error. However, I want to explain the situation if it at all helps, your guys' determining factor. So, like I said, my name is Anthony Farinella. I'm the owner of Direct Appraisal Management, and we are licensed in roughly over 20-something other states. And Tennessee is an important state for us, and we understand, appreciate, and respect the process that you guys are going through. So we don't take that lightly. I'm almost 40 years old, and when I was about 18 years old, I was involved in an altercation that really actually had nothing to do with me. It was one of those typical wrong place at wrong time, but that's here nor there. I take full responsibility for it, but I was an adolescent at the time. However, the reasoning for my response, and I want to make sure I don't want to lie and sit here and say that I accidentally said something. I genuinely interpreted that my consequence at the time when I was 18 years old was that the charge was being expunged. it went from an original felony battery charge or involvement in battery down to a misdemeanor. So I was informed by my attorney at the time that it would not go against me. And again, it's 22 years ago, and I'm thinking that because it was it was a misdemeanor, and I did the requirements made by me from the courts, that it was all kind of taken care of. So like I've done in other states, I've explained and expressed the exact same situation, and that's how things were granted. But again, it's not, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood whether it matters or not. I wanted you guys to understand the clarification on what the actual charges were. It was, merely a group altercation that I was a part of at a movie theater. So with that being said, I just want to let you know how important this is to me, my family, and my staff. And I apologize for the miscommunication and the error. It was a misunderstanding that I didn't have an opportunity to kind of like explain the whole thing, but it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, well, no, because I'm not convicted and it wasn't any charge and I didn't have to do jail time or anything like that. And so I deeply apologize, and I hope you guys can understand that, and please take this application in consideration with that.
Thank you, Mr. Farinella, and please stand by because there may be additional questions that may come your way.
Absolutely.
I appreciate those comments.
Of course.
And Commission, also one thing to keep in mind that's a little different than some of our other programs, since we touched on that a little bit, is that this AMC and also our trainees, they have to run a background. Some of our other programs don't. And so if they do mark no, then it's going to show up. So whereas in some of our other programs, we rely heavily on that affidavit. And so that there is a little bit more, I think, in that regard, it could be some vulnerabilities should we find otherwise, when we're not, after the fact, when we're not running a report. So not to add another wrinkle, to the thought process, but just something to consider.
I've got a question.
Yes, and lastly, I don't mean to interchime. I will just say this one last thing. With all the other states and the applications and the affidavits, it has been brought up in the past, and some have just granted, or some have asked for clarification, and I've kind of done the exact same process. And whether it means anything or not, have never submitted one application on any professional status that's ever been declined as well, once my thorough background check has been completed. So I will also leave you with that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Farinelli, thank you for being on with us. Quick question for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you said you'd gone through this with other states. So on those applications, did you answer the same way? No? With those states?
Yes. I'm to be 100% honest with you. So some states are different. Some ask for sometimes, and again, and please take this the best way you can. Sometimes the legal, terms are more confusing than others, and you're always kind of in that situation where you're kind of like, okay, you don't want to mislead or lie or could something jeopardize something. So some have been yes, some have been no. Some the way the questions have been worded, but some allow for an explanation. Where the ones that have allowed for explanation will kind of elaborate a little bit more and explain. So quite simply put, I've always just answered the question the best possible way I could. And then even with the application, they do a full background check. So it was always, and then if it came up and said, hey, we noticed this, they would ask for clarification or whatever. But yeah, no, it was always just answered to the best possible capabilities I could.
Mr. Farinella, quick question. Has your AMC ever had any issues from an operation standpoint within other states that you know of?
From an offer standpoint, I'm sorry?
Just operation. Just didn't know if you had any violations or anything.
No.
Okay.
No, never once. Never with the board, with the regulation. There's been zero claims. We are extremely compliant on all fronts. We successfully conduct business in all the states licensed and are getting licensed in others. But yes, no, sir, nothing whatsoever. As we take it extremely seriously and we know the importance of it, so it's a very important element for us.
Anybody have any other questions? Okay, Mr. Farinell, I think we're okay. So we'll continue the discussion among ourselves.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Just kind of thinking out loud here. If he was to resubmit another application with the correct information, subject to pay the our new application, correct information.
Yeah, typically there's I have to look at the statute, but sometimes the application fees are obviously they're different than the licensing fee. The licensing fee is usually the big fee, and then the application fee, which comes together to make that $2,000. Neither here nor there, but to say that sometimes the statute says that the application fee is non-refundable, and then there's no discretion, on that. Whereas there might be discretion on the licensing fee, which may be I think the application fee is like $50 or $100 or something. It's not a lot. I think it's the licensing fee that's the issue. So, but again, having 6 different programs, some are, that's non-refundable, but that's okay over here, in another program. So I would just have to take a look at that. Just a note on the file would probably, at this point, would probably be sufficient, and an addendum, because that's what we've done with other folks before, because at this point we can't go back in time or history, just a note on the file to articulate a justification for that would probably be sufficient. And obviously the board has a discretion, so it's not. It's in statute, so whatever the board decides would be fine as far as one way or the other if you want to approve or deny. And then there's not so many of these. Again, we were talking about that earlier. That maybe the unintended consequences wouldn't be as scary with by setting the precedent necessarily, because you wouldn't necessarily be a precedent except for to say that not saying you went with the denial, but if you did, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that in every single case. We have such a small, you could just evaluate each on the merits, but we need to articulate what those merits are, and apply that equally across the board if we did that. Thoughts? Any inclinations?
I have a question. So we have an application summary, and then there's attached a affidavit. The affidavit does give the opportunity, if you answer any of the questions as yes, then you're asked to provide a written summary to explain your answer. But you're not allowed that option with the summary. So if you answered one of these questions with a yes on the summary, and you answered it yes on the affidavit, and provide a response on the affidavit, would that be okay, or is that going to be a problem because there's a yes on the summary and there's no comments? Is that an automatic?
No, yeses are. If you, well, besides the fact
are they treated separately, or are they treated as a unit? The affidavit and the summary, I guess, is my question.
They're not. They're not. And the affidavit is a part of that AMC controlling person. Paperwork that they file that they attach their online application. But they're not. And if there is a charge, or we always obviously have to answer those questions truthfully. And but the yes is helpful with the summary, because then just for sake of administrative efficiency, because then I have an explanation that I can follow up, and then we can decide if it's material to to their application. In this case, or in the other case I'm talking about too, the DUI, it wouldn't have been, so we would have moved it along. If we had any questions about that, we would have obviously reached out to some of our industry experts to see if maybe there's something, that would be unique to the industry. But other than that,
do you know whether we've had applications in the past that have marked one of these items as yes, that you've had to go back and?
Oh yes, that's pretty common. That happens across programs. We see that quite a bit. And this program is no different than those others. I've seen, yeses on applications for trainees or controlling owners or whatever. And, if I have any, obviously I'll reach out to Anna if I'm sort of, I don't know, could it be, could we bridge there? And, maybe I'm taking this, I don't want to take anything too lightly or miss something. And so if I need to put my head in the huddle, then I can do that with legal, and they'll say, oh no, that's not, we don't have really grounds for a denial at that point. And then we'll move it on.
One thing I was going to ask a question about, if there's approximately 20 state licenses, and it's a federal law to do a background check, I'm just curious how many times that showed up, and, did the applicant know that this was going to come up? Did they, truly misunderstand the way the question was asked? Or it seems like if it's a federal law and that background check were conducted 20 times, that it would come up with enough consistency to kind of know what that answer was going to be. So I was just a little confused by that, or if there was any further discussion on that.
I think, obviously Mr. Farinella is best to speak for himself, but he did sort of touch on that. Mr. Farinella, did you have anything you wanted to add as far as to that comment by Commissioner Pratt, or any follow-up regarding?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate that. So to answer that question directly is the fact that, quite frankly, I'd say 80%, 90% of them have just come back, approved, with the questions asked and answered appropriately. However, any ones that were not, that I was either received a phone call or asked for clarification. And then furthermore, what they've done since then is they've said, okay, since that situation, has there been anything else? And I've just blatantly answered, absolutely not. I've never had any other, almost not even barely any traffic tickets, but there's been nothing else. They've asked a little bit more about my background. I'm a pillar in the community. I actually serve on the youth commission for my city council in in the town I live in with my wife and children. So sometimes they've gotten a little bit more deep, and I think, and I'm not trying to speak for them, but I think sometimes it goes by the type of charge or something like that, or the vagueness of it. But to answer your question directly, sir, the answer is basically, quite frankly, none of them, I'd say 90% of them have just approved, and then anything else I've had to go on to further explanation. So, yes, that's the answer to that.
Any other thoughts?
And then I don't mean to. Obviously, I can't. There's a lot of things you can do. One thing that one of the commissioners mentioned before is if we were to, could you submit with a new controlling person? Well, yeah, you could do that. So that's an option. So it's, but again, there's, you'll have to work that out among yourselves. But there's a lot of pieces there.
I'm kind of a small shop, truthfully. So I am the controlling person, unfortunately. However, yes. And as you mentioned, I know you mentioned about the severity of the expense. If there's a monetary value to resubmitting an application, I understand, and I accept that, fault on my end, whether it's a full application fee or a resubmitting of an application. However you guys would foresee it, going, I understand any repercussions. So I embrace it, and I accept whatever you guys come up with. And I don't want this to be an issue, and I understand why it is. And I just want to let you guys know that if that's a way to kind of remedy this, now that you understand a little bit further into the situation, if it's a resubmittal or if it's just an acceptance moving forward, I'm prepared for any of those quests.
Yeah,
I think the issue is awareness. Sounds like at least in that 10%, he said where it came up, he was aware that it may come up. And so if reapplication is possible, might lean towards that route.
You want to put that in the form of a motion?
He wouldn't necessarily. I see what you mean by I don't. He wouldn't have to reapply necessarily because I mean, he would be submitting the information we already have, and so we at that point we would just be charging a fee basically, and then that's more in line with what we would do with like a complaint, which is not. And I know our minds immediately go to complaints, but since it's not a complaint, it's not. It's this one would have a sort of it's on a different track, and but one thing you could do is you could if you were to approve, just with the sort of the administrative note that that we knew that we had that safeguard with the background report, and then just sort of a warning that hey, look, full disclosure, and then just something that I mean you could do that just to sort of make. Just some sort of administrative note that going forward, press and restart, you got your license in other places if you wanted to do that. And just going forward, and then that would weigh if there's a complaint in the future, as well, because first time, sometimes you'll give folks the benefit of the doubt, not knowing where they're coming from and what their background is, not having that relationship yet in the form of a license. But the second time you wouldn't do that necessarily. So sometimes we do that, because then we'll have context. That's an option. I'm not telling you that's what we need to do. But as far as application, although I appreciate, what the board is trying to do trying to get all of our ducks in a row and getting everything in order. I think at that point we would just be, we already have the information. We just basically be taking the same application and, starting a new file number, but we'd still have the same file. So I don't know that we accomplished what we're trying to accomplish by doing a new application. Although I definitely appreciate the spirit of it. I think then it's much in line with what we do with complaints, and so all very appropriate sort of track. But from the administrative side of things, I don't know that we're accomplishing what we're trying to. Is what I'm saying.
Do we not want at least a new affidavit with the answers checked correctly?
That I think would be appropriate. That's a great idea. And then add that. So would Mr. Vandiver, would that satisfy your thoughts, or where you were trying to necessarily go with that based on what you were hearing?
Yes.
Now back to Mr. Mansfield. I guess we need a motion in that regard.
Put that in form of a motion.
Can someone else do that? I don't know the exact process of this.
That's okay. Just I'll just state it for you, and then if you let me know if that's clear for you, and then if you agree, then that'll be your motion, and then we'll take a second. You would just state what you want to happen. In that case, you would say a motion that we get a new affidavit that's marked appropriately to add to the file. And if that's done, then I suspect that this is going towards approval. If so, that would be the motion.
Yes.
All right, there's your motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion from Mr. Vandiver to approve the application based on a new affidavit. And then we've got a second from Mr. Mansfield. All in favor, please say aye.
Well, just break in here real quick.
Yes, sir.
I do like the idea of putting a note in the file.
Yep.
That, there, some sort of legal recourse there for, him to have to include a note on the application or the approval process to, that there's an issue there.
That would just be a file note since it's not a complaint on our side. So on our licensing screen, should we, that would be something that we would take into consideration should there be a future complaint, that we would refer that over to the.
I agree with that because I think that this is important in the event that there's future problems. That's known that this had happened.
And we were at a sort of a difficult place with the lack of precedent, since it's such a small group of folks, but then also not having that relationship. So we're sort of in the dark there, but going forward, you've given them the benefit of the doubt. The commission was generous in that regard, knowing that the public was always protected because we had the report, and at that point, we also have an admin note should there be a future complaint.
Do we need to revise the motion with or will that
That'll suffice. I can just, by request, I can put that admin note, because again, it'll just be on his license file for us. But it's external for us, so we see it.
Okay. So I think we're ready to vote.
Yes, sir.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries.
Great. And then I think we are ready for education report.
I just wanted to step in and say thank you for everybody. I appreciate all your time, and I will exit, but thank you again for everything. I really appreciate everything.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
You too. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Put Taylor to work right away, didn't we? Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So education report, Mr. Or Dr. Sunderman. I think that is all. That's that education report. So I skipped right over experience there. No, we did that. All right. So education report. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find my bearings here. So Dr. Sunderman, if you would.
I move that we approve the education report unless there's some questions you have for me.
And I appreciate you digging in these too. He gets these throughout, from one meeting to the next, as you all do with experience interviews. So everyone's been working hard. Thank you.
So we've got a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The education report is approved. We're ready for the director's report.
This will be. I'm kind of. I've got a light load today. I've just got the budget report. So, Mr. Vandever, for your benefit, I'll spend a little bit extra time on the budget report, so you'll have a little bit more idea of what you're looking at there. It's basically a P&L chart. You probably saw that. Revenues on top, losses or expenses below, and then whether we have a surplus or deficit month to month, and then that all accrues to what we're adding to the reserves each year. And then we have a trending analysis below that prior fiscal year, so we can compare that same P&L chart to that. And then, of course, the trending chart up top is basically those expense. Edison, if you see that, now that you're an employee of the state, and it seems like a weird thing to say. You're like, when did I get hired? I haven't talked to HR. But, it's a weird sort of place. Board members are considered employees, in some sense, and so they're part of Edison. You're part of the collective now, and so anytime if you were to travel or anything like that, that would be processed through Edison. But Edison is also sort of our accounts balances that we pay a lot of things out of there, not just travel or salary, but we also pay building expenses, other line items as well. So licensing revenue is pretty self-explanatory. Case revenue is what we collect when we administer a fine, whatever that, when they pay that, that's that. State reg fee, that's a reduction of expenses, as an accountant once told me, which sounded a lot like me as an expense, but or a reduction of revenue, that's what they called it. So hence the brackets there, and it's a workaround. Every time we print a license, we pay FNA $5 to do that for us. But I guess they don't consider that a true expense. Seems like it to me. So it's a reduction in revenue. But in case you're wondering what that was, Edison again, we've got salary, technology. Other is sort of a big basket. Other, and you'll notice on May we had an amount of $157,900. What that is the ASC registry fees for AMCs. We paid out 2 invoices. Our reporting period for AMCs is January through March, and all AMCs, they pay that for the calendar year prior. Any appraiser that they had under a covered transaction, they pay a fee for that. And then we're just the collections. We collect the money, pass it on to the ASC as a part of the registry. And so that's what that is. You have some of those invoices after that reporting period, and some that come in a little bit later. And then those invoices, they get cleared, reconciled later. We had 2 of those that month. Hence that 157, that big total you see there. It was actually like 151,500, but that's the lion's share of what that expense was. Other things can be data processing services. Things such as admin costbacks are our shared expenses that would necessarily come under Edison sort of itemized accounts, but are something that we share with other programs and that are prorated based on our imprint. Because we have 26 programs, but not all programs have the same licensing pool. I mean, you know, Cosmo and Barber, they got the same 5,000 licensees. They're going to pay a little bit more than what we're going to pay with 4,000 or something around that in appraisers. Also, complaints are a consideration for that formula. You know, if the reg boards is doing a heavier lift due to complaints, then that's going to factor in some of that too. And then out of that, it puts in the machine, comes out a percentage, and then we share those admin cost backs. You know, our legislative liaisons, you know, that hit the hill for us. They're a part of that reg boards, that shared resource that we all use. You know, rent and rooms and stuff like that. We all share that. So they're basically our roommates. And so we're all paying up a piece of that. That's admin cost backs. So of course, legal cost backs are our hourly rate, for, anytime Anna or Taylor get on it. And, so that's why I try to hustle the meetings along, because they're not cheap, you know, so, and it's sometimes it's a little off-putting when they put a clock when I'm talking to them, you know what I mean? And I know where that's going. So yeah. But that's where legal cost backs are. We may have sometimes investigations may be an expert reviewer or somebody going out to look at something for us on a complaint, something like that. So all that boils down to a net surplus or deficit. Now we're looking at about 2.5. The legislators, they want about 2.5 times our operating expenses in reserve, and so as you can see, we're well above that. So, but I mean, we're spending right at, I think the last time I saw, close to about $1 million. So you're looking at about $2.5 million in reviews is what you would need, and we're looking at about 3.2, and we're going to add maybe 100 to that. But we also have a new contract coming up with Core, and that's going to be a big chunk of shared expenses and admin cost backs. We'll be looking for that under other or technology, depends where the accounts put it. But so as a result, you may see that there. And then also just watching this industry as well. I mean, we talked about that a little bit before. The licensee pool may shrink a little bit. We've seen some contractions in the past when there's some changes in the market. We've certainly seen that in home inspectors, real estate brokers, and the like. So I don't suspect this to be any different. Not worried about it, but we don't go. When you're about $500,000-$600,000 over reserves, that can be ate away quickly with a contract, with a licensing pool restricting, with a lawsuit. So that's why we try to stay close as we can. So all that to say, we're in really good fiscal health, and I feel good about where we're headed. But I am watching those sort of trends as we go along in the budget, and I'll let you know if I see anything. Unless you see anything on the report, it's informational purpose only. We don't vote on it. But you're welcome to, if you think about something on the drive home and you have a question about that, then I can, of course, follow up, and just send me an email as well. But unless there's any questions, we don't have to vote. But we're in, looks like we closed out the year in surplus. So it looks like 143. That 991 account you're looking at, that's the closeout reconciliation, because the fiscal year ends in June, but there's all those things that sort of trickle in that you have to reconcile the fiscal year, and that's where they do that. But as you can see, that's pretty minor, and that's why there's also no revenue up at the top, because that's their closeout period. That's that 2 months afterwards that they're cleaning it all up. And so we've started a new fiscal year in July. And hopefully next meeting I'll have something to report for that new fiscal year. So I won't always go into that detail with it, but just for the benefit of new members, just kind of give them an idea where we're at. All right. We are ready for public comment period related to items on the agenda. Do we have anyone that'd like to comment on the record, either on the meeting, online, or in the suite? No. David still says no. Okay. Anyone online? Hearing none, then I think we're ready for the legal report.
Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Before I get into it, are there any questions or any that would like to be handled first?
Since Commissioner Vandiver hasn't been here in the past, we typically group a couple together that are like that have the same recommendation. There's actually a couple different groupings that I had identified. I thought 1 and 2 together were similar, 6 through 13 and 17. Talk about those.
Okay. Yeah, so 1 and 2 are just both recommendations for dismiss. The first one is being recommended for dismissal, which is 2023022291. Due to an expert review being conducted, and I'm not finding any use path issues within the report. Number 2, this was a complaint that was alleging the respondent, who is an appraiser, failed to honor the complainant's right of refusal on the property. This is outside of the commission's jurisdiction, so this was also recommended for dismissal. If you guys want to vote on those two, which is number 2 is 2023019241.
Thank you, Taylor.
Make a motion to dismiss.
A second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Dismissal.
Number 3 is also a dismissal, which is 2023023841, but this one is a little bit different than those two. So I'll go into that one a little bit. Within this complaint, the complainant was alleging that respondent was directing an unlicensed person to perform thousands of, quote unquote, thousands of appraisal reviews. The respondent adamantly denied this and provided information for what the alleged employee was doing. They stated that the employee was just aiding with assisting with just kind of office work and helping them conduct their work. There was no evidence supplied by the complainant that actually substantiated any of these allegations, so that's why I was recommending that for dismissal.
I separated this one out because, like I said, I had a couple questions.
Yeah, that's no problem.
First, do we know if this individual worked for a bank or an appraiser?
Let me pull up their folder to see if that's within there. Off the top of my head, I don't remember I do not think they mentioned that in the complaint or the response, but I'm going to pull it up just to ensure. They're not specifically, the complaint or response does not specifically mention an appraisal management company or a bank. It just says that this was their employee.
And do we know if this unlicensed individual, were they actually signing reports, signing reviews?
To my knowledge and the evidence we were supplied, they were not. They did not supply any kind of evidence of anything like that, just their allegations within the complaint, and then the respondent denied it and provided anything that was provided by the employee.
Anybody have any thoughts, questions?
If you're wanting more information on this is something that we can also send out for investigation, to where an investigator can go out and speak with both the complainant and the respondent and see if they can obtain any more information if you're not comfortable with the dismissal at this point.
Well, I'm pretty sure of this, but maybe our AMC representative can help me out here. If you're working for a bank, you don't have to be licensed. But if you're outside and you're contracted and you're performing appraisal review work, then you do have to hold a license. And so that's kind of where I was going with that. And then if they're obviously signing reports without a license, that's an issue in itself as well.
There's no evidence of that at this moment. So, like I said, we can have an investigator go out, kind of obtain more information. If there's more information that you're looking for, and represent this at the next meeting, we can hold off on that.
I think so. I think I'd like more information before we vote on that.
So, if somebody wants a motion to have this sent out for investigation and held off into the next meeting, we can do that.
Move that we hold off until the next meeting and await for an investigation to be made.
Okay, we've got a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. And then number 4, which is 2023020281. In here, complainant is a department within a bank. They allege that respondents' appraisal that they performed for them was materially deficient. Respondent explained that they undertook due research and took into account all of the aspects of the information they found when creating their report. An expert review was conducted. The expert found minimal violations only within the sales comparison approach section. They noted that while the response to each allegation is acceptable and merit consideration, the appraisal did not include a summary analysis of the differences in condition between the subject and the sales. The expert noted this was reflective of non-compliance with the USPAP standard 11B, 14A, 21B, and 22A XS. Based on the minimal violations found and then the lack of history with the respondent, counsel was recommending a letter of instruction pertaining to the aforementioned USPAP violations.
And just so everyone on the commission is aware, a letter of instruction does not go on the record, but a letter of warning does. So we have 2 different options there.
That's correct.
It seems to me the letter of instruction is appropriate in this case. I would make a motion to accept that.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, then number 5 is 2023016021. Within this, the complainant states that they reached out to respondent on January 18th, 2023, requesting for them to perform an appraisal. They said that they hired respondent and paid them up front. They allege, however, as of March 30th, 2023, they had not received respondent's report, nor had they heard from them. Respondent also failed to answer the complaint and answer the commission. An investigator went out there to try to get more information within this, and both the respondent and complainant failed to comply with the investigator's request and did not participate in the investigation. As such, I was recommending a letter of instruction pertaining to respondent's duty to answer the commission, just to kind of remind them that as a licensee, they have a duty to be answering the commission and participating in investigations.
So an investigator actually contacted this individual and they refused to provide any...
They couldn't get into contact with them. They did contact the complainant. The complainant didn't comply with it, did not participate in it. They attempted to contact the respondent and never got in contact with them or received any information.
Question, what happens if at a later date the complainant now comes back? Is this now totally finished? I mean, my feeling is the complainant doesn't reply. My feeling is it's dead.
Yeah, that's kind of why I leaned more to just a letter of instruction just pertaining to their failure to reply to us as opposed to any merits of the complaint, because it is on the complainant to be involved on the complainant to a sense to be involved and be substantiating their complaints. And so that's kind of why I was leaning more towards just having the letter of instruction pertain to their duty to answer the commission. The complainant, this could be closed. The complainant could come back and file another complaint if they want. At that point, it determines whether or not there's new information and whether or not a new complaint should be opened. But this complaint would be closed with the letter of instruction if that is what was voted upon.
So just so I'm clear, who's failing to respond? Is it the respondent or the complainant?
Okay, sorry. So the respondent was sent a request for an answer pertaining to the complaint from our department. They did not answer that. They failed to respond to that. At that point, an investigation was initiated just because we had no information. So that's pretty typical within the department and the commissions and boards I work with, if a respondent does not answer the initial complaint and the request for a response, I'll send out an investigator to try to contact them to try to get more information. At that point, I don't know if they were failing to answer or if they just never got any of the information. The investigator left them, but the investigator attempted to leave a card at their home and attempted to call them and email them, and they never heard back. So you can kind of view that as a failure to respond. They could come back and say they didn't get the information, but we went off the information that we have with that is registered with their license with our department. And the complainant also denied. The complainant obviously filed the complaint, provided that information at that time, but they did not answer the investigator either. The investigator also reached out to them via email, phone, and attempted to contact them, and they did not get a response either.
Make a motion to provide a letter of instruction pertaining to the respondent's duty to answer the commission.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay. And then 6 through 13 are,
Yes,
are
correct.
pretty similar. So I'll read each of those complaint numbers into the record right now, and then I'll give a brief overview of what those are pertaining to. So number 6 is 2023026891. 7 is 2023026831. Number 8 is 2023026811. Number 9 is 2023026871. Number 10 is 2023026881. Number 11 is 2023026921. Number 12 is 2023028161. And number 13 is 2023026901. These are all complaints pertaining to that were filed by Fannie Mae pertaining to the use of the term gentrification within the report. Pertaining to the use of gentrification within the report. They were not necessarily alleging that they violated anything or that there was any issues. They were just trying to put people on notice, which is why I was going with the letter of instruction, just to inform them. It doesn't go on their record and it's not discipline. It's just kind of to let them know.
Couple questions. So when Fannie Mae files these complaints, the reports are not sent for an expert review, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I know we had voted in the past that any of these automated complaints, but
These were signed, I believe. So that was the difference. So that's why they would not have been open if under that prior voting if they were not signed, but these were signed. So that's why these complaints were each opened. And these were not sent for expert review just because they were only pertaining to that one word. Yes.
Sorry, if you'll just speak into your microphone, Commissioner Hall.
To my knowledge, Fannie Mae does have a list available for their, I can't remember the exact term they use, but their words to look out for is kind of what was noted in there.
Yeah. And in a couple of the responses, they did state that they do have this list now. Because I'm trying to think of an example. So Fannie Mae sent a letter out in October 5th, 2022, specifically about the term gentrification and that it should not be used in the reports. But these reports, the complaints were about information sent prior to that. So that there is literature out there about this term.
Yeah, and they note it within their complaints that they were not trying to say that they defined that, because a lot of these were happened before the October letter went out. It was just to put people on notice, which is the purpose of the letter of instruction, just to put them on notice. But yeah, a lot of the responses noted in there, as Anna mentioned, that they do now have a list of words to watch out for on the Fannie Mae side.
Sorry. No, we have not. Not to date.
No, I have not either.
And then this first number 6.
Oh, okay. It says that their license expired on 11/30 of 21. Did they ever renew their license? Or
No, they are not renewed, and they are no longer working. That was just to be kind of consistent with that, with throughout it, to have that go out there. Again, because it's not discipline, and it's not held against their record, and it's just for the sake of uniformity.
So the letter of instruction, I understand there's no, it doesn't go in their file. I just, so I guess the point of the letter of instruction is just to send to the respondent or complainant or respondent that he is, or he or she is, we're just recommending we're instructing them to not use this word or do whatever the letter of instruction is indicating. But there's no other issue or no other something that gives on their file. To me, I feel like the letter of instruction is appropriate, but also I could see where just having going through this process for each respondent, that's probably enough as well. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, so a letter of instruction, we hold it within our file just so we know that we issued that. And then if going forward, if they have another complaint filed against them, you'll be made aware that they've had a letter of instruction issued for this problem in the past. But yeah, it's not formal discipline and it's not reported on the National Registry, but we keep it within our files. But yeah, this is something that just to put them on notice is what I was leaning for, but it's kind of at your guys' discretion if you want to do anything pertaining to these issues.
And just for clarification, you said all these happened prior to this letter being issued?
Not necessarily. I'm not sure if I've had all of them. I can read through each one. It's mentioned if they did happen within the complaints. Within the summaries. But there was a good chunk of them that happened prior to the letter going out. Yes.
And I think 14 is the one where we've got to sort of dig into deeper.
Yeah, that one's is a little separate, just due to the response that was received from that complaint.
I have a question too. What responsibility does Trek have to Fannie Mae? I mean, they're a quasi-government organization, isn't that correct? I mean, are we here to support their requests?
They're not necessarily, but they can file complaints just like any other entity. So that's the only thing that we're beholden to as well. So we can't the commission made the decision in 2022 to not open complaints unless they were signed. And so these complaints were signed, which is why they're being brought before you. But we don't do or dictate anything because Fannie Mae tells us to do so. But they're just like anybody else, a consumer in this case that has filed a complaint with our board and commission.
From what I understand, reading through this yesterday, I believe that once you turn in a residential report from here on out, if you've got words that are on the banned list from Fannie Mae, it won't allow you to actually submit the report. It actually says it's a fatal report submission, and then it'll tell you identify which words that you need to change, and then this becomes a moot issue. I don't think this will come again to the board from the way I understand it.
To that as an AMC.
Comment on what Bill just said? I've not seen anything come down from Fannie on that. It would be lovely.
But when a report's submitted to a collateral underwriter or whatever, would that be
You don't CC you.
So
That's only on the lender's end. Now they've come back to us with a number of these requests to remove certain verbiage and stuff like that we take back to the appraisers. But as far as the collateral underwriter or anything like that, we have no privy to that. That's simply with the lender underwriter.
Anybody have any other thoughts, discussions on these?
No, I can make a motion, but I have no other thoughts. No. My motion would be with all these do we go through, which numbers do we go through?
6 to 13.
6 through 13. Okay, so we stopped before 14. Gotcha.
Yes.
My motion would be, and we may have more discussion because of this, is that I would motion to provide no letter of instruction to any of these. I believe they've all sort of understood through their response that they know they should not have used this word. That's my thought.
Just to clarify the motion, you're just motioning for them to be dismissed without action?
Yes.
So we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? The second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay. Number 14 is 2023-027061. This is another instance where it was a complaint that was filed after the respondent used the term gentrification. However, due to respondents' answer to the complaint, which included profane and inappropriate comments regarding the complaint and the commission, I was recommending issuing a letter of warning pertaining to those comments in their response.
I noticed that this person is unlicensed.
They're licensed in another state, and so it wouldn't have necessarily ended on our plate had they have not sent the response that they sent to the commission.
So were they doing an appraisal in Tennessee? Did they have a
no, so that's what I was trying to say. This appraisal actually happened in another state. So initially this complaint would have just been closed. However, their response was pretty egregious. And so it opened into this complaint, and that's why we are recommending the letter of warning, not necessarily for the appraisal or the term itself, but due to the response that they provided.
So just clarifying, they have a reciprocal license in Tennessee, or they're licensed in Tennessee, or no, or?
To my understanding, they're not licensed in Tennessee at all. I believe that this was, do you have?
How did it get to us?
From Fannie Mae. That's why I'm not sure exactly why they filed it with us. I'm not sure if this was a mistake or if they why they necessarily were bringing it to Tennessee's attention. But the response, that's what I'm saying. At that point, it would have just been closed. However, the response they provided was pretty egregious. So that's how it kind of ended up here. We could also, I believe that they are licensed in South Carolina, so we could also refer this over to them as well.
Would the correspondence be referred over to them as well?
We could do that, yes.
Yeah, but it's not about them, it's about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would the letter of warning would it prevent them in the future from getting a reciprocal license in Tennessee, or? No.
It would be on their record, and letters of warning are submitted to the National Registry, so this is something that would be noted on there. And then we can also issue the letter of warning and also refer it to South Carolina if that is something that you're looking to do. And then they have a little bit obviously more jurisdiction over all of that as a licensee. But
do we have availability to look at what the response was? I mean, I know we don't want to read it out loud in public, but just didn't know.
No. It's just inappropriate for us to read it on the record in any form or fashion. So you'll just have to take our word for it. Right, that's where he's saying normally it would have been dismissed
with no action.
But we thought basically based upon the response that was submitted back for it, which alluded to, the fact that it did not have to do with the commission, that the commission may want to consider that.
I make a motion that we forward this complaint to the appropriate state and where the report was generated.
And no letter of warning pertaining to the response.
I don't think we have jurisdiction, do we?
We do, yes. Yeah. But that's at your discretion. If you want to issue that or not coming from us, we can just refer it. We can issue a letter of warning and refer it. That's at your guys' discretion.
I say we should refer it and issue a letter of warning.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just going to say the same thing. Without knowing the context of the letter, I think we go with legal's advice on that because we don't know exactly what was said of the context. So I think what Sandy's saying, in addition to referring to South Carolina, I think we should take legal's advice on the letter of warning.
Is that a second?
That's a second.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just to clarify, sorry, I think I might have missed that. Are you just referring it, or are you doing a letter of warning and
No,
referring
it
it?
was the letter of warning and the referral.
Okay, just want to make sure I had that done right. Thank you. Okay, and then 15 to 17, they are all similar issues as well, and I'll read those numbers into the complaint numbers into the record, and then we'll go from there. 15 is 2023-03-0031. 16 is 2023-03-0021, and 17 is 2023-03-0041. These are all pertaining to each of the respondents failing to submit their AMC panel report for their 2022 calendar year transactions. We have done a letter of caution previously for this kind of issue, and as well as continuing education issues, which it gives them a letter of caution to give them about 30 days from the time that it's sent to complete their Tennessee AMC National Registry transaction. However, if they do not comply within that 30 days, a consent order will be automatically sent out for $250 civil penalty, and requiring them to provide their proof of registration within 30 days. This kind of gives them a one last chance before they are getting a consent order to submit their registration.
On this first one we're talking about here, is the business that was sold still an ongoing concern with the new owner, or has it been absorbed by a different company?
To my understanding, it's been absorbed by another company. However, this company was operating within 2022, so they are still required to submit those transactions. And so that is why they are also getting that letter of caution.
Eric, what is a panel report?
Is this the report that we have to file with the number of appraisers who have done business with us each year? We have to pay per appraiser?
Correct.
Okay. That's what it is. We have to submit to the state a report with the number of appraisers that have been used during the course of the year, and we pay a fee per appraiser to the state each year that we've used.
That was that big total. Remember that $151,000 that was being invoiced to us that Commissioner Robinson's referring to, is just all those AMCs doing what we call a panel report. Giving a report, a panel of all of their appraisers that did a covered transaction in the state of Tennessee. And
these three are the three that make up the $151,000.
If they're on the complaint, or they're on the report for not submitting the panel report, right? So that means of our 50, 60, whatever, everyone else submitted a panel report and they did not. We sent out like 5 notices, so we're hoping that we can get their attention, and they might not even have anybody to report. We have some AMCs that have a license there, don't know why, but they didn't have a covered transaction, so that's a big goose egg, and I think it's like $25 per appraiser, so it's not a big fee. We just have some AMCs that covered. They do a lot of work, and so we've seen some $6,000-$7,000 invoices from some AMCs, depending how big they are. So you can imagine that's a lot of appraisers. But in this case, we have a handful, 3 to 5 or something on this complaint report that did not submit that panel report, and they're required to do so per federal regulation. So whether we wanted to or not, they have to come on and per precedent, we bring them on the legal report and try to move them to. We just want them to file a report.
This is how we have historically handled these as well, and from previous reports.
Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation.
Got a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then our final complaint is a representation. This is complaint number 2023-024291. This is one that was discussed at the last meeting, where the Commission authorized a consent order suspending the respondent's license for 6 months. That consent order was sent to the respondent. The respondent hired an attorney, and they responded with a counter offer that is now being represented to you. So I'll just briefly go over kind of what their response was and what their counter offer is, and then you guys can kind of discuss and ask any questions. The respondent noted that they have been licensed as a real estate appraiser in good standing in Tennessee for over 23 years. They explained that they have never been subject to any professional discipline in any jurisdiction, and that they have built a successful real estate appraisal business, currently employing 2 staff members and 1 trainee. They said that they regret the incident that occurred and that they have taken steps to better themselves in the months that have followed. The respondent's legal counsel does not believe that this necessarily falls under the USPAP ethics rule. They say that the rule goes into 3 sections: conduct, management, and confidentiality, and they do not believe that the respondent's act falls under any of these. They are arguing that based off of what the ethic rule outlines, that they think that the 6 month suspension is extreme, and they are countering with paying a civil penalty at the choice of the commission, continuing education as directed by the commission, and to sign a consent order stipulating to their conduct.
Got a comment. In USPAP, under the ethics rule, line 174 and 175 is the first 2 lines under the ethics rule.
We agree. We're on the same page as that.
I just want to read it. It says, an appraiser must promote and preserve the public trust inherent in appraisal practice by observing the highest standards of professional ethics.
Yes, we noted that as well, but that was not included in their argument. So
we thought maybe they forgot those.
Yeah, so we were prepared to discuss that if there was questions about that.
So with that, I still think that they did violate the ethics rule.
Yes,
we had voted on this and made a decision. Have any other ideas and thoughts?
I guess at that point, it's just discussing whether or not you think you should change the discipline that was assessed. You absolutely have jurisdiction under that, and then I believe it falls under that. So that's up to you if you want to discuss changing, if you want to discuss considering their counter offer and changing your discipline that you assessed.
And just to clarify, we're required to bring counter offers to you by law. So that is why it's being presented to you as another offer of settlement.
I wasn't here last meeting, but I read about this. And it's my understanding that a 6 month suspension is pretty much a death sentence to an appraiser, which I can understand that. How would this violation of the USPAP ethical standards be any different from the omission of information on an application for admittance, a business admittance into this state? I'm just, is that not just a little bit, and is that not just a little bit rough? Are there not other things that we could do to the appraiser to get their attention, have them go to some kind of, have them pay a fee, have them pay a fine, some ethical courses that they may have to take extra over and above? I'm throwing that out there.
That is within your discretion. You are able to require a civil penalty and or classes that you at your discretion that you think would be applicable here. They would have to sign the consent order, which somebody could do, which is public information. So they would have to stipulate to the facts of that. So that is something that's to be considered. But you can assess a civil penalty at your discretion and or continuing education above and beyond what's required.
Have there been civil penalties assessed by this commission before, and what kind of range are they?
Yeah, so we don't have anything that's necessarily particular to this situation in the past, in this case. They have assessed civil penalties in the past. And
dollar amounts?
I'm trying to think of something that would be kind of more, that would relate to this. That would be because it ranges depending on the issue and how many violations were found and what the person's history is. And so it's very case specific on certain factors like history, if they're participating, if they're responding, and kind of how many violations were found.
Quick question. Since June, when we first discussed this, and I'm doubtful that this has occurred, but has there been any other commissions that have faced anything similar to this that they have voted on or
Not
provided penalties
to
for?
my knowledge, Anna. I don't know if you've had anything similar like this come up in any of your.
Nothing new. Nothing new other than the previous kind of thing that we talked about with the medicine cabinet issue before at the last meeting. So we don't have anything else that's analogous to this.
I didn't hear that.
Okay,
What was
so the Real Estate Commission had a case where an agent went into a medicine cabinet while they were viewing or touring a home and took medicine out of the medicine cabinet. And the recommendation from the Real Estate Commission from that case was a suspension as well.
They stole something.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have any clarification on what the respondent means by that they have taken steps to better themselves in the months to follow? Is there any clarification on
What
that?
they expanded on that was that they've just been taking ethics classes regarding to real estate.
Cited specific courses or just general?
There was a, let me pull up their folder. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the folder to get the name of the class. Just says additional real estate ethics classes. So no, not necessarily a clarification on exactly what class they took, just that they took ethics class courses pertaining to real estate.
We know if the complainant is pursuing any other legal options regarding this besides, or are they leaving it to us to?
To my knowledge, they have not taken steps to file a criminal complaint or anything to that sort.
Just want to make a comment. It says that they have one trainee, and just my observation would be that a suspension of this person's license would in effect be a suspension of the trainee's license as well. Just take that into consideration.
That is something that they brought up when we spoke with them. I think that was their main concern, is my understanding.
I do think with the additional information that we've received relative to the two employees that are full-time and the trainee, we certainly need to have additional discussion about their counteroffer or options, at least have that discussion.
Does council have any recommendations based on the new information, or is this?
What would an appropriate civil fine be?
So technically under statute, it's a fine per incident, so up to $1,000. So it could be $1,000. And any other courses, if there's any courses that you believe that they should be taking.
I'm really troubled by this because obviously this is an event that he got caught at. We have no idea, obviously, how many times this may have happened in the past, whether it may happen in the future. I'm troubled by the fact that this is someone that we have licensed that has access to people's homes. And in some respects, with us not doing something, we're basically giving him the ability to go ahead and perhaps continue doing this. And he may be taking an ethics class in real estate. that may be fine in terms of dealing with other aspects of ethics, but that doesn't mean that he is safe to be going into people's homes.
That's a very
and
good
dealing
point.
with their
Something.
property. So I am troubled by the fact of his employees and the trainee, but at the same time, I wish there was some way of saying, okay, but you can't go into someone's home again. So I'm troubled with how to do this, and just even a fine that doesn't solve the problem of giving him the permission perhaps to continue doing this.
And one just real quick, just administrative reminder: the decision doesn't have to be unanimous; it can be a majority. Sometimes these are hard decisions, and everyone has to obviously vote their conscience based on the information they have in front of them. And so, I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah. So if we don't typically. We all come to some sort of consensus at some point, but sometimes there are going to be cases like this where, it requires us to really dig in and separate that out, and maybe not everyone gets there. So that's just throw that out there.
Something that could also be considered is you can still suspend them for less than 6 months. That's something that you guys can discuss as well. So, that's suspension is still on the table at whatever amount of time you guys feel is appropriate, as well as civil penalty up to $1,000 and continuing education. Or the discipline could stay as it is.
I think I would lean more toward the things that they've asked, additional continuing ed, a civil penalty, and to sign a consent order because of the additional employees that I should not say he, it could be a she, or the appraiser has. This is very uncomfortable, obviously, to talk about or to go through, but the fact that the person has been an appraiser for 23 years, I hate to ruin someone's career over touching one item in a house, although it was caught on camera. But that to me that's a whole lot.
And from my understanding of the complaint, I believe it was maybe a little bit more than just touching an item, but
there's some kind of counseling that could be recommended?
We can't require them.
Okay. All right.
The most concerning part of it is having the person enter someone's home continuously. Placing a value on a property is something different than entering somebody's house. That sounds to be the most concerning part. And I also don't think the 23-year appraisal history is a mitigating factor. I think it might be a negative. Have you been doing this for 23 years and no one caught you yet?
Discussion? Anybody have a motion?
Can you clarify to us signing the consent order? What exactly does that entail, and what all is included in that? Can you just clarify that?
Yeah. So basically, within the consent order, I will kind of lay out the facts of the complaint and what, and probably mention some things of the response and what the commission found, and then it will include the USPAP ethics rule and obviously the line that pertains to it. And at that point, they would have to sign that. And then somebody could, if they requested it through public records request, they could obtain that consent order. If there are specific things you want me to mention in the consent order, that's something you can also include in your motion. Yeah, and then a consent order. If we were to move forward with suspension, that will also be within a consent order that they have the option to accept or deny. And then at that point, if they were to deny it, it would go to a formal hearing.
Just based on your conversations, do you think that that's probably the next step? I know it's tough.
I think as it stands at 6 months suspension, that, likely the next step would probably be a formal hearing.
And because I'm new to the commission somewhat, is the formal hearing with us, or is that?
It's with you and an ALJ, an administrative law judge.
That happened during these meetings?
It would happen at a meeting. It's a public hearing. So.
Are there any motions that anyone wanted to float out there?
Like our goal here is to balance the public trust, which this is a violation of the public trust, with the appropriate punishment. And unfortunately, I guess my hang up here is the punishment impacts other people that weren't involved in the action. So I'm just not familiar with all the potential courses of action here, but hopefully it wouldn't negatively impact the other people involved or not involved.
To me, that's I feel the same way. Is how do we impose something that stresses the severity of how we feel of the issue, but also not ultimately in the career or paths of the other people that weren't involved. So, maybe something in between what was originally requested and kind of what the counteroffer is. And if there's any discussion on that, the suspension levels, that's at our discretion relative to number of months. There's not any.
That's correct.
Certain things. Mm-hmm. Okay. If we were going to, as part of the entire order, offer classes in addition to whatever suspension or not, what sort of list of classes will we include other than ethics? Or are there other, you mentioned there's nothing else that we can, other than appraisal courses, there's no other actions that can be taken from other types of courses. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any sort of probationary status that we put this respondent on, or?
No.
Say again? Oh, if you were to reduce the suspension to, say, 30 days, I believe I would not want to be suspended, but there are things people can do in the office who work for him, gathering comparable information under the assumption that he is or she is going to be resuming his license, his or her license.
I know there's a lot of talk too about not impacting the trainee and other people in the office, but I think it's worth considering.
Your microphone wasn't on, but you were saying, just for the record, in case someone else is watching, or we go back in the record, that, one consideration is the trainees themselves, as well. We don't want to negatively impact them either way, either work-wise or putting them in proximity to somebody maybe that we don't want in that role either. So was sort of?
Yes, correct. Okay. Does anybody have a motion?
When would the suspension take place if we were to agree to that?
So what would happen now is whatever you vote on, it will be sent out in a consent order, which is basically the settlement offer for them, at which point they have 30 days to decide if they're going to accept your offer. And at that point, let's say they sign it within the 30 days or at the 30th day. Once they sign it, that's when the suspension would start.
If they choose to fight it and have the administrative hearing here, when would that take place?
Most likely at the November meeting, as long as it gets set and they can appear at that date and everything like that, but most likely at the November meeting.
And you said the administrative law judge, is he there just to?
But you decide on the facts, and they're there just to help to decide on any legal questions.
You're basically the jury.
They don't make any kind of a ruling.
Evidentiary ruling.
Right. So they rule on any objections, evidentiary type rulings.
You'll be making any decision.
Eventually, it's going to come back to us to make the final decision.
Correct.
Theoretically, the trainee would have 3, 4, 5 months to make a different decision. So that's a little safeguard for their employment.
Further discussion?
And if we did that at that time, we might still relook the option of a 30-day suspension and a fine versus like to our Just start this discussion.
Yeah, at that point, that is it's at the public meeting. A hearing proceeds open to the public, and you will hear our side, their side, and then you will discuss and vote on what you want to happen.
So it seems as if any suspension, it's likely going to be.
I can't speak to that. Just I've only spoke to him about the 6. I've only spoke to them about the 6 months.
Of course, coming back to a formal hearing, everything's back on the table, and it's like a plea deal. You can pass it if you want, but then sometimes it don't fare so well for you when you go to court.
And just to clarify, the max penalty financially is $1,000. Is that correct in this particular case?
Yes, because it's only one incident, so you can assign $1,000 per incident. Mm-hmm. This is one incident, so you can do $1,000.
I'm going to make a motion that they take additional continuing ed, they pay the civil penalty up to $1,000, and they sign a consent order stipulating to their conduct.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor.
Do we have a second?
Discussion or question?
Sure.
Without any probation and or suspension, just to clarify.
Yes.
You said they don't have probation.
Oh, that's right.
Need a second for that motion to stand. Otherwise, if it fails, then we'll need another motion. Do we have a second with the motion we have on the table now?
Second it.
Okay. Second. So then further discussion.
I would. The only thing I would say is, no suspension at all, even if it's 30 to 60 days, seems like a pretty dramatic shift from the original ruling. It seems as though maybe somewhere in the middle would make sense to me.
I agree with that.
Whether it's a 30 or 60 or whatever day suspension is along with the ethics course.
If the motion fails, then we would need a new motion. And at that point, you could present one with the suspension option. Right now, we have a motion on the table for, or stand by. I just want to make sure we get the administrative part right. After speaking with legal, one thing that Anna mentioned is a substitute motion. We don't typically haven't used them as much as other programs, but since it is permitted, we could do that as well. And in that one, you would just offer basically an alternative motion in that regard. And it sounds like that's where you want to go with the continuing education, or I'll let you make your substitute motion. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What would be your substitute motion if you were to make an alternative motion?
I'm not sure if anyone wants to have any additional discussion of whether that is a 30 or 60 day period, but my alternate motion would be that we require the additional courses, we impose the $1,000 civil penalty, and do something in the range of 30 to 60 days if there's any discussion on that.
I would also tend to agree. I don't think that the $1,000 in the ethics class serves what's. So yes, so I would agree, and that's
You have a 30 or 60 range.
Any discussion on the versus 30 versus 60 relative to the impact of not only to the respondent but also the employees?
I think that 30 days.
I agree. I think 30 days is probably a good middle ground here. I mean, obviously we're going from 6 to 1 month, but that I think it's definitely going to have a consequence in this respondents' daily life and business for sure.
So then we have 30 days. And Mr. Haston, would you want to add any continuing education, the fine, or just the 30 days?
I make a motion for a 30-day suspension, $1,000 fine, and no additional. I just don't think another ethics class is going to change this.
So 30 days suspension, $1,000 fine. Would you? Is there a second to that substitute motion?
Can we have any additional discussion on that?
Of course.
Bryson?
Yes.
I do think an ethics course would, in addition to whatever we impose, is necessary. I think, anything that's put forth, that needs to be a part of it, in my opinion.
I think we also need to make sure we have the consent order as well.
Yeah, no matter what, there'll be a consent order no matter what the vote is. Yeah, that's how.
But I agree with the ethics.
Also, this will be published, right, in the whatever the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission rulings. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I know from being married to a banker that his staff checks those filings. So it will be harsh for this person and will probably ruin their career.
But he has taken an ethics course.
They have taken it.
Okay.
That's what they said in their response.
During this,
but yeah, during their time, they have mentioned that in their response that they have taken an ethics course. I think multiple was mine.
And if we were to vote on and approve the 30-day suspension, the civil fine, and or not a ethics class, the consent order gets sent to them, that they still have to sign off on it, or they could still say no, and then we would end up in a hearing back to here.
I'll make another motion that says, if I'm allowed to, that 30-day suspension, $1,000 fine, ethics course, and the signed consent order.
Just to be clear, we need to probably define the length of the course, right? And what type of, I don't even know of any appraisal.
Yeah, you would need to vote and decide what kind of course you want. I can try to pull up some courses to give some ideas, but I don't know. I don't know if any of you have any in mind, but I can pull up a course list and kind of look into that.
Or we could just say a certain number of hours within an ethics course,
within the ethics realm, yes.
Do you want to clarify to that just so that everybody's clear?
Which class are we?
You want to specify a certain amount of hours you want them to take in ethics courses.
Ethics courses are there?
What's the base? Is it a 15-hour course? What's the
So I don't know how many hours ethics courses are generally. So like if you want to give like a specific amount of hours, they can take courses to add to that amount. And if it goes in excess, it goes in excess, in that amount. So, I mean, generally, so it's going to be CE, right? So I don't know, do you guys take CE ethics courses? What is the average amount of course hours?
The only one that I know of, I believe, is 14 hours. Oh.
Recommend 14 hours of ethics courses to be taken in how many days?
Within 30 days of this ruling.
For signature of the consent order?
It would be once the consent order is executed,
Yeah.
so within 30 days of the consent order execution. And I looked up some classes that, like the Appraisal Foundation, they have this thing called Corrective Education, which has a bunch of seminars on ethics and negligence. So ethics and negligence, they have a bunch of courses on that. So, I mean, there's options for them to take if you want them to take. They could take one 14-hour course. They could take multiple 4-hour courses. They could take just to meet the kind of hours that you're looking for. And like Anna said, if they have to go in excess, and they have to go in excess as long as they get within the 14 hours.
And I think something else that we've done in the past is, do we want this to go towards their continuing education?
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would
on top of
specify
this.
onto above. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you want
but
it to go
over and above the continuing education.
So
Yes.
what I'm hearing is a motion for $1,000 civil penalty, and 14 hours of ethics courses to be completed within 30 days of execution of the consent order, and a 30-day suspension upon execution of consent order.
Yes.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion before we vote? Do we want to do a roll call vote here?
Yes.
I'll do all right. It'll be the ayes or nays. I'll just go down the list. And again, it's towards the continuing education, the fine, and a 30-day suspension. All right. Eric Robinson.
Aye.
Brett Mansfield.
No.
Francie Mello.
Aye.
Sandra Tuck.
No.
Nelson Pratt.
Aye.
Dr. Mark Sunderman.
Aye.
Will Haston.
Aye.
Taylor Van Dever.
Aye.
All right. We have a majority vote then, so then we'll send that consent order out and get that back to them, and then we'll let you know.
All right. I think that
concludes the
legal report.
Okay. Next we have I have a set of rules that I'm going to present before you. So after we had the appraisal subcommittee visit us, there were certain changes to our rules that were required to be made. And on your iPads, you should have a red line before you. And so the red line is going to outline the areas of changes that are required. So essentially, there are 3 changes of the rules that need to be amended, but there are 4 rules that are going to be changed. So the first amendment is going to be to the qualifications for state licensed. So the requirement is that all USPAP instructors, not only are they required to be state certified, a state certified appraiser, but they're also required to be in good standing. So I will be adding the "and good standing" language to the paragraph for Rule 1255-01-.05 and the Rule 1255-01-.07. Also, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit because I want to go to I'm going to talk about the specific areas. Also, that is going to be covered in the general qualifying education course content guidelines, which are found in 1255-02. And that talks about the 7-hour and 15-hour USPAP course. So I'll be adding "in good standing" to that as well. The next change that's required is going to be to the state certified residential appraiser general education requirement. We need to add that in order to be a certified residential appraiser, the bachelor's degree or higher is required. So that is going to be added to that paragraph A. And then the last change is going to be on the next page, and it's going to be in the appraisal management company registration and regulation chapters, and that's going to be in Rule 1255-08-.01 in paragraph G. So this talks about the requirements for certification, and we're taking out the more than 10% owned language. It's required that any person, any percentage, so any person owned an appraisal management company, any person cannot be convicted of a felony misdemeanor involving theft of services, money, or property, or having their appraiser license, certification, or registration denied, revoked, or suspended. So it states that in statute, but we just need the rule to match that. So these rules next after I receive your approval, we'll move these over to the, it'll go through our internal approval process, and it'll need to be approved by the governor's office, and then go to a rulemaking hearing. Won't be done, we won't be able to have a rulemaking hearing in November, just for time purposes, because it has to be at the Secretary of State's office for 52 days. And I'm not great at math, but I know the amount of time I need to get the internal approval in the governor's office. We're not going to be able to hit that deadline in November. So the next meeting in 2024 is when you'll likely have that rulemaking hearing. Also, just to let you know, there are going to be some criteria changes in USPAP that go into effect on 1/1/2024. Since we have the new USPAP that it's going into effect, we don't need to make changes to our rules about that, because our rules don't go specifically into the specific standards for USPAP. So those are going to be internally in USPAP. Those changes are going to be made. And if you like, I can go over the specific changes in USPAP at the November meeting that will go into effect on January 1, 2024. We've also got some new changes that are going to go into effect January 1, 2026. But starting the rulemaking process now is not going to make any sense. Timing wise, I'm not sure how that would work since we're 3 years out. I was talking to Glenn, worst case scenario, if it took a year and a half to do the rulemaking process, which we aim for a year, we would still be in 2025, so before it even happened. What I will need in order to move forward is a motion to accept the ability to move forward in the rulemaking process. But after, if you guys have any questions about the amendments that are being made.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes all from legal.
All right, moving on to new business, correct?
Yeah, unless do we have any new business? Okay. None, Chair, it is your prerogative then, you can adjourn since we've already approved the agenda.
Okay, do we need it?
We won't since we've already approved the agenda. So
perfect. Move to adjourn.
All right, thanks, sir.